Let's start with an overview of what test planning and documentation actually involve. These are the foundational elements that guide and record the entire testing process. Okay, so test planning is about creating a detailed plan. This plan outlines exactly how you're going to approach your testing. Okay, and this plan includes your testing strategy, it includes your objectives, scope, the resources you'll need, and even the schedules that you'll follow, and the specific activities you'll carry throughout the testing process. So, this test plan acts like a roadmap that ensures all parts of the software are considered. By proper test planning, you're ensuring that you're considering all parts of the software, and then you're making sure that the testing is done in a systematic and organized way. And on the documentation side, this involves creating various key documents such as test cases, test scripts, test plans, and traceability matrices. And we will cover what traceability matrix is later in this course. But these documents provide clear, detailed information on how testing will be conducted and how the results will be tracked. All right. So it's all about making sure everything is recorded so that you and your team know exactly what has been tested and how it has been tested and what was the outcome. Right. So if you don't have the documentation, and if you're a team of people, if you're a team of testers, then how are you going to communicate what you're doing, and how are you communicating what the results were, and how are you tracking your entire testing process, right? So that's where the documentation is very important to clearly define what will be tested, how it will be tested, and what are the outcomes. Now let's look at the importance of test planning and documentation. Understanding why test planning and documentation are so important is really needed for anyone involved in software testing, because these activities are what keep this testing process organized, efficient, and effective. Because without a proper test planning and documentation, then things can go off track and it's going to get very messy. So, what test planning and documentation offers is, first one is clarity and focus. Test planning and documentation gives you a clear understanding of what needs to be tested and how it will be done. This clarity helps you and your team stay focused on the testing objectives and the scope of the work. Okay, so that anything that is important in the project is not overlooked. That is very, very important. All right. Then risk management. A well thought out test plan also helps in identifying potential risk early on. It allows you to outline strategies to mitigate these risks, ensuring that the most critical areas of the software are thoroughly tested to minimize any potential issues down the line. By planning and anticipating the potential risks and then laying them down in document helps you stay focused, and then you tackle high risk areas first. It'll give you a structure and it'll give you something to refer to. That is why it is very important that there is proper test planning and documentation, okay, for risk management. And then for resource allocation. Effective test planning helps in allocating the right resources, like the time, tools, and the personnel, that is needed for the testing effort. If you plan ahead, you can ensure that the resources, that are needed can be utilized efficiently, avoiding any bottlenecks. Okay. And if there is a need for resources that needs to be procured early on, you can be prepared. You can be prepared and you can put in a request to procure those resources or even personnel. If you want to move people around in the teams, you can do that. Or if you have to hire any specialized expertise in your team, then you can do that as well. But you can only do that if you plan well ahead of time. And this test planning and documentation comes very handy for that. And the next one is traceability and accountability. So, with good documentation, you can create traceability matrices that link requirements to specific test cases. And we're going to cover this later in this course, but traceability matrix in a simple term is you have your requirements and then you write test cases off of it. Then you link whatever test cases belong to a certain requirement, you kind of mash them together, you build a matrix. That way, the test cases can be linked to the requirements. Okay, by doing so, it ensures that all requirements are thoroughly covered and it provides a clear record of what was tested, right? So, by having the test cases linked to the requirements, you know what's being tested. And it also makes it easier to track progress and hold the team accountable for their work. Okay, so it helps in traceability and accountability.